don't have any goodies for me. I got you secretly the last time with the cold open, and we were doing some good banter, a banta, and we you got a cup of tea there. Nice cuppa. I kind of came out Australian a little bit when I said that. Yeah, I'm watching too much Bluey. That's all the internet has. But we have a lovely cup of tea to go along with our fifth Harry Potter movie, Order of Phoenix. This is the fifth one. We are Two Christians Watch. I am Hannah, that is Will. We watch films from a Christian perspective. We did not grow up with Harry Potter, even though it was in our generation. It was very present in the zeitgeist of our time. And we are now officially watching the Harry Potter movies for the first time and reacting to them for your enjoyment and pleasure, but also to see if we can glean any spiritual truth from them, but also just kind of to complain. That's what the series has turned into. Not all of the podcasts are like this. Sometimes we actually have very meaningful discussion about films, but then sometimes we do this. Well, anyway, yeah, like I said, I'm Hannah, and that's Will. Say hello, Will.
This movie, this one nearly destroyed me. This one nearly broke my poor mind with how, oh man. I mean, I really appreciate those first four compared to this one. This one's rough, and yeah.
So what would you rate it out of 10?
It's 5. It's 5. It's on this, I might have to redact and give a 6 to the first one, because at least the first one told a story that was well woven. This one is it's like if you decided to start weaving a tapestry, right? And you start off with, like, I don't know, linen or whatever, and then you go to a different type of cloth and you keep changing the type.
Isn't that like against the Old Testament law? You can't have two kinds of cloth interwoven with each other.
Something like that. But it literally feels like, and these are not like separate movies being woven together or separate plots. It's just like the plot is so staggered, and there's one concept, one idea, it's just broken up into like these minuscule pieces, and I'm expected to like care about it.
Yeah, I would say this is the beginning of a longer plot, because I think this film starts a longer arc that will end with the last movie. So the first two were standalone stories. The third one, we started getting introduced to characters that were going to come back. And then the fourth one, Voldemort's back. And so this one now is like, okay, he's back. What are we going to do about it? It's like the beginning rumblings of like the war that's going to come. So it is a little different structurally in plot in that way. I did feel like it threw just a lot at us, more than before. There was a lot going on.
But at the same time, I felt like they threw stuff from the previous movies out the window. And
yeah. Do you want to do your job of summarizing? You want me to try to summarize this time?
No. I got it. So once again, for some bizarre reason, we've started back once again at the house of Harry Potter, where he's staying with the people who are supposed to be his guardians, who are abusive to him. And at this point, before I move on to the summary, we are 5 movies in. It is apparent to his teachers and his fellow classmates that these people are awful towards him. And yet, there's no like magical thing they can do to have they've already said they can erase memories. They could just erase the memories of the people who are supposed to be his guardians, that he exists. Then you could take Harry and bring him to the Weasleys, who already are taking care of him. So it's because almost every movie has to start with, they are awful towards him. He needs to leave. And so he leaves. This time he is outside and he is enjoying the summer, swinging on the swings, and his cousin is now an official bully with a gang, and he is harassing Harry. Harry pulls out his wand. Everybody mocks him because it looks like he's being silly, and all of a sudden the sky turns gray, and his cousin's gang pieces out because they're like, why is the sky all of a sudden gray? So they leave. So Harry takes off with his cousin. They end up in a tunnel and they are attacked by Dementors. And Harry takes out his wand again and casts a Patronus spell, which is the same spell he used to cast away the Dementors 2 movies ago. And so he sends them away, and a lady comes up and says, you guys need to come with me. I'm going to keep you safe. She takes him back home, and the guardians take the cousin to the hospital because the Dementors got to him very quickly and started pulling out his soul, and Harry was able to stop them. And then later on, Harry gets a letter from not Hogwarts, from the Ministry of Magic, saying he's expelled from Hogwarts because he used magic in public. So he's all like flustered and sad about that. And then the real Mad-Eye Moody and team, and he has a team of people come up to him, come to get Harry and say, hey, it's not official yet. You've not officially been expelled. We need to get you to the Ministry so we can bring you to trial so you can defend yourself. And then they get on broomsticks and they decide, hey, here's a great idea. Let's go through metropolitan London on broomsticks, which
they were just like, hey, don't do magic in public. And then they're like flying past people on boats on the river. And I'm like,
they're right outside of Parliament.
Yeah.
And I'm like, so what are the rules? What are the rules? Anyways, they go to the Ministry of Magic. They are threatening to expel Harry Potter, and then his defense lawyer comes in, and it is
his defense lawyer comes in, and it's Dumbledore,
and it's like
Dumbles.
Yeah, he's like, hey, we have a witness that these the Dementors were attacking him, and this is a problem because Dementors are not sentient beings; they are sent on a mission from the Ministry of Magic, and you guys are the Ministry of Magic, so something's up. And then they decide to vote to not expel Harry, that he's absolved of all his charges, and yay. But then Dumbledore's like, peace out, and he keeps ignoring Harry almost the entire movie. He's like kind of ditching Harry, trying to play coy while Harry is trying to adapt to being back at school. But the Ministry of Magic puts out an official notification that Harry was lying about the death of Diggory.
It's like a smear campaign against Harry and Dumbledore.
Right, that they are lying about the death of Cedric Diggory, and that that Voldemort is not back, that it's all just a bunch of hoopla. And so now the students are thinking that Harry's lying about everything, that he's all just a bunch of crazy people. And then they get a new Minister of Magic, a new defense teacher. Defense against the dark arts teacher. And
it's also the bad teacher.
We'll get to that in a second. But basically, first off, it's important to know we are at our fifth defense against the arts teacher, the dark arts teacher, and we're already 5 movies in. So this is really ridiculous. This is a silly trend we got going on. But anyway, this lady is on the Ministry of Magic. So she was the one who voted against Harry, and said that he was lying about everything and that he should lose his place at Hogwarts. And she makes it her mission to make the lives of all the students at the school a living nightmare by removing all their fun and their ability to use magic, but also to prevent them from learning new spells and learning how to defend themselves. So they are basically becoming regular students at a regular school. They have to read textbooks, they have to take tests, and they can't have PDA on public campuses. Meanwhile, Harry's like, hey, the threat's real. I'm scared, and so I'm going to take my friends and we're going to go train with whatever we remember from our classes. So Harry somehow or another knows more spells than he ever has. Magic, I guess. He just learns a bunch of spells and decides to pass it on to his classmates in a secret cultish meeting where they are training on the side. Meanwhile, he keeps having these dreams of people being attacked or killed, including the Weasley father. And so he goes and finally confronts Dumbledore. He's like, hey, I need your help. I think this is a real thing. They find out it is real, that they were able to get to Professor Diggory at the right time and save him from being attacked by Voldemort. And then so they continue this campaign where Severus Snape is supposed to help train Harry Potter how to defend his mind against Voldemort, because they find out Voldemort and him are mentally linked after their confrontation.
That kind of reminded me of Inception, when he was like, they fake Cillian Murphy's character, and they're like, oh, we were put in your brain to protect you from infiltration or whatever.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so all this is happening. They keep doing this montage of the new teacher from the ministry learns of a new thing that's going on at the school, and so she gets permission to become that. Like, she can shut that down. So like, she sees PDA. She's like, no students allowed to be within 8 inches of each other. She sees people hanging out. All student classes, all student groups are canceled. She sees somebody doing something wrong. She now takes control of the campus. And so it's becoming just kind of like, she just becomes like a dictator of the school, and Dumbledore is kind of piecing out. They think Dumbledore's lost his mind. he leaves and he stops talking to Harry altogether. Meanwhile, Sirius Black keeps meeting with him every once in a while, trying to encourage him, but not really giving him a lot of information, except that they once had an organization called the Order of the Phoenix that they formed as soon as Voldemort first attacked 14 years ago to combat him. And Voldemort had an army of his own that he used to kill Neville Longbottom's parents, used to kill Harry's parents, and then one other set of people died.
It was a character we don't know a lot about. It said she was killed and her family was killed.
Oh, that's right.
I don't think we've met her.
Luna.
Was it Luna's family?
Yeah, remember it was her dad. Her mom is alive. Her dad was killed.
No, her mom, she said her mom died from trying to do an experiment.
That's right.
There was a person in the picture. He's like, this was so-and-so. And 2 weeks after this picture was taken, she was killed and her whole family. But I don't think we know anything about her yet.
Right. And then we are introduced to a new character. Her name is Luna, who can see dead horses. And Harry can see dead horses, but nobody else can see dead horses because these two people have experienced death, either come close to death or seen death. And so these dead horses are kind to them and hang out with them on occasion. But they're the only two people who can see them or physically touch them.
No, okay, not physically touch them. Other people can physically touch them because
we did not see that. We didn't see somebody accidentally touch it and like, what's that? I don't know what that is. We'll get to that. We'll talk about that later. But the rule Luna said is like, if you've experienced death, you can interact with these creatures. So just keep that in mind. We're going to talk about that later. Anyways, they get a group together and they're finally like, okay, we've had a vision that Dumbledore's secret weapon against Voldemort is in this location in the Ministry of Magic. They're like, okay, we're going to get a group of students together that we've been training with. We're going to go invade the Ministry of Magic while it's closed. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Magic is the police and government of the magic world, at least in the Eastern Hemisphere. So it is constantly supposed to monitor threats as well as breaking the law. It can't do that if it's closed. But anyways, they go in when it's closed. They find Lucius Malfoy and some Death Eaters are trying to find this weapon. Harry finds it first. It turns out it's a prophecy about Harry's connection with Voldemort, that they are intertwined, but only one of them can exist at once. So one of them will have to kill the other person. And so they try to escape. They try to attack these threats, and they get cornered. And in comes the Order of the Phoenix, which was led by Sirius Black and Mad-Eye Moody.
And then mention some of the people that were the Death Eaters that we know a little bit about that were there.
Only 2 of them. One of them is Lucius Malfoy, and the other one, I don't remember her character name, but it's Helena Bonham Carter.
Yeah. Bellatrix was her name.
Bellatrix, who was the person who killed Neville Longbottom's parents.
Yes.
So what happens is she ends up killing Sirius Black, sends him into a portal. This throws Harry into a rage. He goes and chases after her. And when he's about to kill her using the Crucius spell,
I'm not sure. He
was going to torture her, and he didn't use the full spell.
Or he wasn't. Voldemort says like, "Oh, you had to mean it," or something like that.
So Voldemort appears to him and says, "You could killed all these people. She's a threat. Just kill her." And he says no. And Voldemort's about to kill Harry, and then Dumbledore appears. We get a duel between Dumbledore and Voldemort. Voldemort ends up pretty much retreating into Harry's mind, taking over his mind and like attacking him mentally, trying to possess him. We get a bunch of visions of what's happened to Harry so far, but also potential futures where Harry sees himself as Voldemort almost possessing his body, and that Voldemort's trying to manipulate him, take control of him and his actions. Harry resists, and Voldemort is trying to escape, and he sees that the Ministry of Magic finally arrives, sees that Voldemort is back, that Dumbledore and Harry weren't lying, and Voldemort pieces out, and Harry is able to escape with Dumbledore. And Dumbledore's like, "I'm sorry, I've been ditching you. I thought that me ignoring you is the best way to protect you, that if I wasn't around you, that Voldemort wouldn't attack." And so Harry's like, "It's cool." And then they go home for the summer, and that's it.
Real quick.
And the professor, the new teacher, gets basically removed because she's insane.
So we're talking about Umbridge. And then they find, so when the Order of the Phoenix, I guess is what it's called, the kids that are training, they find this thing called the Room of Requirement. You're like, but it was like the way they could like do it in secret and train, and then it's revealed that Cho Chang like rats them out, and they're obviously taken out, and like they take out the room, or they don't give them access to it anymore. And then it's revealed a little bit later that she used Umbridge used a truth serum on Cho, and so that's just a point we're going to make later, just to that be known.
But just keep in mind, when the students were not allowed to learn magic anymore, learn how to use spells or defend themselves, the school decided that it was important for them to do that, so it created a room for them.
It said that it always existed, but it's like if there's a need for it, it will
magically
it reveals itself.
But it's been 5 movies and they've never talked about this, or even that the school is sentient, or the school is magic and will provide for the students as needed.
They've implied that it's sentient with the stairs.
With the stairs
that move around.
No.
I take that as implication that there's magic in the walls, that it does things and can do things. There's been spells put on in the walls of Hogwarts multiple times.
What's your first point, Hannah?
We had a little joke in the beginning where they're like, oh, it's the hottest day. It's that literally like that Santana song with
it's a hot one.
6 inches from the midday sun. It's like it felt like they were gonna start playing that on the radio, and they're like, oh, it's so hot. It's in the mid 90s Fahrenheit, 30s in Celsius, and then they all act weird when that storm comes in randomly. I'm like, they would not last. And we're from North Carolina. That's pretty much a standard summer day here. It's like it gets really hot, and then there's a huge storm that comes out of nowhere and rains really hard for like 40 minutes, and then it goes away. That's pretty much the summers I know. But of course, I mean, that wasn't the weather. That was a magical thing. But it was a funny thing where I was like, this is just normal summer weather for me. And then there is this character called Miss Fig that we talked about. She was the witness that Dumbledore called about the Dementor attack. And she knows Harry. Harry knows her, and he does not know. Oh no, she knows he's a wizard, and they've never confirmed if she's a wizard or not.
Not yet, at least.
Yeah, not yet.
But she does say something inaccurate. So when the Dementors appear, they don't look like they did in the 3rd movie. They look almost, they don't look wraith-like anymore. They look like, hard to really pin down, but basically they look demon-like.
Yeah, almost like more slimy. They were really wispy before.
Right,
And they had like cloaks, and this one they kind of look a little bit more wet.
Snake-like, yeah, but she when she gets to the trial, she's like, yeah, they were cloaked. I'm like, no, they weren't. They did not have their cloaks this time. So I was like, at first I didn't think they were Dementors because they didn't look like Dementors. And they confirmed it later. I'm like, okay, but so how are these things controlled? But like, we're not going to get into that. That's another question for another day. But
yeah,
it's like, are they somebody write down a piece of paper, go here?
I know. Well, that's what they're implying. Dumbledore's like, hey, you told them to attack Harry. So the thing that
Dementor dash.
So basically what Dumbledore's saying is that what was his name? Fudge? Mr. Fudge? Cornelius Fudge. I always said that sounds like a Roald Dahl character, not Well, I mean, so he's the head of Ministry of Magic. He believes that Dumbledore's lying about Voldemort, and he wants to take his position from him at the Ministry of Magic. So he's whipping up this like plan against him, and so he's trying to like nip this whole idea in the bud. And he's like, "Oh, I'll just make Harry Potter, commit this like break this law of not being able to use magic under the age of 17 or in public in front of Muggles. So he has to be expelled, and then he can't be used by Dumbledore anymore." So he's like, hey, so you sent the Dementors to attack him, so he would have to use the Patronus Charm or some type of magic, and therefore he would be expelled or possibly just been killed. Because if he had not had his wand or it wasn't at the ready, him and Dudley would have been killed. So that's kind of what they're saying in the movie, that was the Dementor dash. The order was like, go here, was the whole plot by that guy to keep his seat in the Ministry of Magic. But I'm going to bench Miss Fig. We're going to table her and just be like, is she going to come back later? It's just a character to me that I'm like, I have a feeling maybe she'll come back later, maybe not. I don't know. But I was curious about her. And then our next point. So we literally are like, what do we want to talk about? The last movie, we had a lot of problems with Ron and how he was acting. He was being like a brat. Do you want to talk about that?
Yeah. So previously, we saw last movie, Ron was the troublemaker who wouldn't believe Harry, even though Harry had always been truthful with him, was being a jerk to Hermione, bullied her, essentially, mocked her, and withheld information from Harry that he desperately needed. In this movie, Ron is like chilled out. He's back to movie 3 behavior. Harry is a jerk. Harry is attitudinal. He's quick to react. He's quickly to get emotional, and he doesn't think clearly at all. And he just immediately jumps to acting irrationally. And honestly, so he starts the whole campaign against Umbridge. I like to not overthrow her, but to just continue teaching the way he feels like they need to be taught. But if it doesn't make sense in the sense like the Harry from like 2 movies ago would have been like, okay, we need to go along with this for right now, but I'm going to secretly try to talk with McGonagall, or I'm going to secretly try to talk to somebody that I can have a conversation with about this and see what the best option is, because McGonagall is, on her own warpath because her friends are getting hurt. Her friends and students are getting hurt. And so she would have been definitely a teacher that he could have confided in and gotten advice from. Nobody speaks to her the entire film except for Umbridge and Dumbledore, and that is it.
Maggie Smith had to have 1 day of shooting on this movie. She showed up, she did 2 scenes with Umbridge, and that was it.
Yeah, but I'm like, why wouldn't you? She is trying to get a good word, people. She's a reliable character. She's proven that she cares about the students, she cares about the school, she cares about the safety of Harry and his friends. She's proven that for 4 movies. But not going to her and trying to start your own little army, it doesn't make any logical sense. And it's causing more problems. More of your friends are getting abused and hurt by this teacher. And if you would just go along with it, a lot less rules would have been created, and you could have had conversations. Or heaven forbid, nobody was watching at night. You could have trained at night quietly when you were in your rooms.
Yeah. They do tell Harry, because Harry's the first one to get quilled. he has to write with that cursed pen, and basically it injures his hand, and they're like, you need to report this. And he's like, no. And I think it's Harry is well, first of all, he says in this movie at one point, he's like, I'm angry all the time. And and so it's kind of this idea that Voldemort's encroaching in on him and trying to make him be distant from everybody. Luna even says that. He's like, I would try to get you to go away from all your friends. But I think that he's just been so traumatized at this point that he has a hard time trusting people, but at the same time Voldemort's using that to his advantage. So he kind of learns to start trusting people a little bit in this one, but he's still I need to have an arm's length because he's scared of losing them or them getting killed, which is rightfully so. But yeah, I think a lot of what's coming from that is that he's just gone through so much. But what doesn't happen, or so it doesn't help, is that he's going through all of this and Dumbledore just leaves him on red. He doesn't try to secretly help him. He doesn't try to give him any information. And I just felt that was a huge mistake on his point, because now I don't get it actually. I said he did the Edward and New Moon move where he's like, I stepped away for your protection. I was too dangerous. I just you couldn't have left him out like that. He's a 15-year-old at this point, and he is gone through so much in his life. No wonder he's angry. But yeah, so that's what our point was, just that Ron was more chill and more mature. And so he just mellowed out. I don't know if that was the actor being like, hey, I was a butt last movie, or if that was written in the book or something, but it was a notable difference. And it was also that Harry was very hairy, if you get what I'm saying, very rough around the edges. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we were also talking about how 3-4 movies have happened with Harry Potter, and they even mention all the stuff that he's done at one point in the movie, and they're like, oh no, the newspaper says this, so it has to be true, so Harry's a liar. And we were just really frustrated about that.
It just doesn't make sense. So it's publicly known that Voldemort attacked the school a couple times. He's trying to start stuff, they've got, the Chamber of Secrets and, what was the first one?
The Philosopher's Stone.
Yes. And both of them were Voldemort trying to come back. And it's
there at one point, at Cedric Diggory's thing, Dumbledore says he was killed by Voldemort to the school.
Yes, to the entire school.
Yeah.
And then this movie, the students we all know you're lying, Harry. We all know this is all made up, Harry. Even though their fellow students were frozen in time, they saw a dead body appear out of nowhere in the last movie. Blood was written on the walls. Spiders everywhere. And just bad things happening. all over the place for 4 movies. That's 4 years. And you're expecting me to be like, you know what? These students are definitely going to believe a newspaper where it says that their teacher and their classmate they've known for 4 years is lying to them.
One of them's like, well, me mom said this, and I believe me mom. And he didn't change his mind until his mom changed her mind.
Which is very true to life. But
he was, and then they almost got into a yo mama fight, and I was like, are we really doing this right now?
Right, but it doesn't make any logical sense for the students to not believe Harry, but also for the newspaper, like for all of a sudden, the Minister of Magic was like, it's not real, none of it's real. I'm like, you've got reports that they newspaper reports, and then you got somebody who is a convicted murderer or accused murderer on the run trying to target Harry. Everybody knows he's targeting Harry. Why? It just the plot of the whole that background plot doesn't make sense in the long run. Why would the Minister of Magic all of a sudden be against Harry and Dumbledore and believe that they're like conspiring? It doesn't make sense when the evidence in the past 4 movies have been proving otherwise.
I guess if we had to go back and look at the plots, maybe it was like there is knowledge we think everyone knows, but not everyone knows. But at the same time, there's things that Harry definitely knows that he could have been telling people. Like, well, they know now because Lucius revealed his face to the other kids. But I was like, did he ever say that he saw Lucius there when Cedric died? Like,
he also saw the Minister of Magic talking to Lucius.
I thought that too. That this whole reason for all that happened was not because what's his name, Fudge, was afraid, but really he was in Voldemort's pocket. That was like the real reason.
But at the same time, at the end of the movie, he's like, Voldemort's back. Like, he could have easily, if that was going to be the case, he could have easily been like, Dumbledore, you've constructed this fake Voldemort to deceive me, to whatever. Because he was already acting ignorant the whole time anyways.
Yeah, I wonder if it's a commentary. What was the Chamberlain? What was it called? The Chamberlain Agreement? But like he like signed that peace treaty or something with Hitler, and everyone says that was like the worst move, one of the worst moves in British history. And I'm like, is she trying to make a comment about like the English like government and how they're not, because first of all, this is all English centered because it's J.K. Rowling, but I was like, that whole mistrust of authority, and like I almost feel like she was trying to say like, hey, we did this when Hitler was here, we just kind of turned a blind eye because we were too afraid, and we can't do that, we got to fight. And I don't know if that, I mean, I guess now in our generation, I'm so used to everything being a social commentary of like what's happening right now. Maybe she was just taking from history to build her story, but that's what it felt like with that whole thing of them just trying to be like, we're going to ignore any idea of a problem and just sit here is what I was like. I thought of it. Reminded me of that whole thing of like Chamberlain being like, did he like give him like part of land or something like that? What was the part of the land he gave Hitler?
Yeah, he gave part of, I believe, Czechoslovakia.
Yeah.
And he was like, if you take this, will you be a good boy? And he was like, I'll be good boy. And they're like, we did it. We got peace. War was prevented. I did that. That's what
it reminded me of, is like she's painting this government as like, hey, we'll just pretend it's not here and we're great. And that's what she, like in the class, she's like, you just have to learn theoretically how to defend yourself. You don't really have to learn how to defend yourself because there's no problem. There's no trouble. Well,
one of the other things that was like mind-numbingly dumb in like the plot. So halfway through the movie, there's a prison break at Azkaban, okay? And a bunch of Voldemort's cohorts escape. And this is not like, they just knocked out a couple of guards. Like, they blow up half of the place. And people escape, including
Bellatrix.
And they're like, he's like, this was definitely Sirius Black. He went back to Azkaban to free the people. It doesn't make sense for that to like to even be part of the plot. Like that, I don't know. The plot, like there's too many illogical steps for this to be like, what I'm trying to say is a plot needs to be a logical succession of events, and it's got to thread together. And there's got to be a point where you can no longer keep like a narrative going. It has to be a narrative break because of logic, or you lose the audience. This is one of those moments for me where it's like a person who is a minister of magic is leading an entire probably hemisphere in magic is like this dense and then is this dumb. Now, it may be revealed in like 2 or 3 movies where it's like he was actually like being manipulated or whatever. But as of right now, he's just dense and he's just naive. And it doesn't make sense to there's got to be a point where you're like, this plot of him being naive and ignorant has to have a breaking point. Has to have a point where this is no longer like a logical thread. And that was like a pivotal point, plus everything else that happened in the past 3 movies.
It was that plot though with when they were like, oh, Sirius broke everyone out of Azkaban. That was when that kid was like, oh, my mom's saying it's not adding up anymore. So like, I believe you now, kind of. So it was like everyone else saw that didn't make sense in the narrative.
Yeah, but it's like, it would be like if we were watching a movie where aliens were invading Earth and it started becoming very, very obvious the aliens were here. And the president of the United States was like, guys, come on. There's no aliens here. Even though like on the news, there's footage of them and people are having actual like vivid reports of this and like they're all making sense. It's the same thing. It's to the point where you're like, that plot line doesn't make sense for any logical storytelling for somebody to be that ignorant that long and be in that position.
Yeah. Okay. I see what you're saying. So there has to be some corruption going on there. Like maybe it's a puppeteer system. Maybe someone else is really pulling the strings. Like maybe Lucius is really pulling the strings there. We don't know.
Neville
Longbottom?
Have you seen him?
What do you mean? He's this kid.
Is he? I mean, we saw a rat turn into a man turn into a dog.
So you think that there's this lady, I think last year, where she like dressed up as a high school student. She was like 32 and she infiltrated a high school and went there as like a fake student for like a week or something like that. They're actually having protests that the students at that school are protesting. They said that they were not safe at that time because someone could infiltrate them. But you think he's doing that? The Neville Longbottom's like, I'm just gonna pretend to be a baby and I'll be with all the other babies, but I'm actually the mastermind here.
It would be the best plot twist this movie's got going for it.
Okay, so we're gonna move on. Remember I said this movie just threw stuff at us? I was like, why is this just smacking us with stuff? Hagrid is away for a while. Okay. He comes back halfway through the movie.
He looks disheveled, and every shot he's in is grainy and green. And I don't understand. Like the rest of the movie is like a bluish gray tint. Anything he's in is like forest green, like everything, not just him. And it feels like real weird, like real unearthly.
Maybe they had to film his scenes separately. Like maybe they couldn't get, well, I'm pretty sure that him not being there in the first half was definitely like in the book, but he comes back and he says, oh, secretly to the kids, he's like, Dumbledore wanted me to go talk to giants and get them on our side to fight against Dumbledore. And you know who else was there? The Death Eaters. They were trying to get the giants too. And they're like, this is crazy. And then a couple like weeks later, he's like, hey, so Dumbledore's not headmaster anymore, which means I'm probably gonna get fired. So come in the woods with me because I have something I need to show you and ask you a favor. They go in the woods. And there's a kid giant, like not a full grown giant, but I don't know how old he is in giant years.
He looks awful. That's some of the worst CGI I've seen in a long time.
And okay, Hagrid is known for keeping random mystical creatures in the woods. And I was like, okay, this is another mystical creature. And then he says, he's my half-brother. And I was like, whoa, stop the presses. He's related to Hagrid? How does that even work? If he's his half-brother, which parent do they share? Which one's the giant?
But also, if you've ever seen any of the Mad magazines, the character on the front, his face looks exactly like this giant.
Like the kid from the Mad magazines?
Like the Mad kid, yeah. It's like, that's unsettling. But also, he just looks, it's uncanny valley. He doesn't look like he's really there. It's very frustrating. This movie franchise can't decide if it likes practical effects or awful effects. There's just no in between.
They're trying to do like CGI that it's at the time they're making the movie, they don't have the technology to do. Okay, that was incorrect to say, supposedly.
Lord of the Rings came out before this, and the CGI is a billion times better.
I mean, I think that way too. I remember watching, I forget their name on YouTube, but they review like CGI and stuff. And they said one of the main reasons why Lord of the Rings got it so correct was that they got lighting very accurate. And like you said, with even Hagrid's a real actor in the scene and his lighting's bad. The lighting for, Grop? I think his name's Grop. No, it's like GRAWP, Grop. I know.
What is there to say? Like, he doesn't say any words. He picks up Hermione. He gives her part of a bicycle. She rings the bell and he's just like, thumbs up. And then that's it. And then they come back to it and they lure Umbridge to the forest. Oh,
yeah. So that's another point. So Umbridge is on her rampage of trying to dismember Dumbledore's army.
A bunch of students.
And then they go and to confront Dumbledore. Was this after?
No, so
this is before
the Phoenix thing.
Yes.
Which, okay, for a movie called The Order of the Phoenix appears once in about 5 seconds and swoops down. Dumbledore reaches up, does a clap with his hands, and then gone. The Phoenix takes him away, and that's it. So for a movie called Order of the Phoenix, for a group called The Order of the Phoenix doesn't hardly appear, and it's a weird choice. Anyways, Dumbledore pieces out when he's about to be arrested by Umbridge and the Minister, and so Harry's like, hey, guess what? Dumbledore's secret weapon against Voldemort is in the forest. Why don't you come?
Harry sees a vision of Sirius being tortured by Voldemort in the Ministry of Magic. So Harry and Ron and Hermione try to go there to save him, and they have to use Dumbledore's office, not Dumbledore, Umbridge's office, because they're gonna use the flu powder or whatever, and her chimney is the only one that's not like has a spell on it or something like that. It's not protected, but they get caught right before that, and she's about to torture Harry with that spell to get him to tell her everything, and Hermione's like, I'll tell you, Hagrid has a secret weapon in the woods, or no, Dumbledore. And so they just run into the woods, and I guess she's gonna show the giant. I'm like, but why would she do that? Because he could be killed, and that's like breaking the promise to Hagrid.
I'm like, he doesn't really like have like a concept of like, this is threat, attack. He got baby brain.
He's baby brain. He's literally like the baby brother who, I don't know how old he is in giant
he's
ears.
Got a full head of hair. He looks like he could grow a beard in a second, and yet he doesn't have processing power, which, I mean, if they're going for like an angle where he's like permanently a baby or he's got some kind of thing, whatever, fine. But to lure one of the side villains of this movie to him for him to attack her,
unethical. Right. After you promised Hagrid you were going to try to take care of him,
and then he gets attacked too.
Yeah. Okay. Then the centaurs show up because they're like, "Hey, you're taking our land." We first met a centaur in the first movie, and he was like, "I am a centaur, Harry Potter," and he had like eloquent speech. And then this one, they were like, it felt kind of wrong, the how they were portraying them, but they were very mad at Umbridge, and they were like, let's fight now and talk later. And then they take Umbridge, and they
accidentally hit the baby boy with arrows,
and he's like, oh. They take Umbridge away into the woods, and somehow she gets out of it. Later on we find out, but I was like, she's dead. They're gonna kill her or do something. They just took her away, and she was out of the movie.
Convenient plot device. I mean, to get rid of the character, you just make a random group of people appear and take them away.
I know, they weren't even like mentioned. It was like Hagrid's like, oh, they're so mad about their land being taken.
It was like, we have to shove this in there because we got to get rid of this other character.
Yeah. I think I might have been saying something about how when Hagrid's like, hey, can I just dump this giant child on you that's my brother to 3 15-year-olds?
And I was like, well, if he thinks he's going to get fired and he knows he's the game warden of the school and he's been raising animals, why doesn't he just live in the woods with his brother and take care of his own responsibility in a place that he goes and visits all the time?
Yeah, or find another wood somewhere to live in as a hermit.
Or as never mind, that changed, but Dumbledore told them that they couldn't remove people from the campus, but she took over. Never mind. But he totally could have lived right there.
Yeah. Yep. Okay, so Harry has the vision of Sirius, and he's like, we gotta go to the Ministry of Magic. And so, how are we gonna get there? And Luna's like, we'll fly, of course. And I thought she was talking about brooms, but she's actually talking about the dead horses that only her and Harry can see, and maybe Neville. But all of them are on these horses flying to London. And so I'm like, can they see the horses or not?
They don't have any explanation of why Hermione and Neville and Ron can see the horses. They are on the horses that are dead horses that can only be seen by people who have experienced death. And yet that whole element, that whole rule, once again, thrown out the window for the sake of convenience.
So they get to the ministry. I have another point about Severus that we wrote down that is like before this, but we can talk about it like right after this. But it does happen before this plot point. But they get to the ministry, which looks like a set from The Matrix. Everything is like black and mirrored for some reason. They just walk in. There's no one there. Like I didn't even notice that until you mentioned it. They're like, where are all the people that work there? Do you have anything to say on that?
No, well, my thing is like, this is supposed to be a room with prophecies. The prophecies are on crystal balls and they're for each person, each magician, each wizard, whatever. But they're just plain crystal balls. Looks like something you would see in like a crystal shop on the side of the road. But the caveat is the reason why Voldemort needed to get Harry there. So it was all a trick to get Harry to come there. So Voldemort put this little dream in Harry's mind to get him to come there, because if a prophecy is about you, you're the only one who can pick it up first.
Or you're the only one who can hear it or something like that.
No, you're the only one who can actually grab it and get it. Because they could have totally gone to Harry with it. But no, they lured him there so he could grab it, and then they were going to take it from him. Which, really? I mean, you really had to add that little caveat in there. You could have just lured him there and then had Lucius kind of reveal the prophecy to him. Very Darth Vader, like, did you know this is actually your prophecy? And Harry's like, that's not true. And he's like, listen. And here he hears it.
Listen to your feelings. Right. You know it to be true.
Instead, it's like, we had to lure you here so you could pick this up, then we could take it from you. I'm like,
gosh, it's like it's revealed that actually he's Voldemort's son. Okay, just get to it. Let's just get to it, Will. The toss scene.
Also, okay, we're just going to say this out loud, okay? Voldemort in this movie was one of the least threatening villains I've ever seen in any film ever.
But I freaking love him. I love him so much. He is such a campy villain, and he's great. I love Ralph Fiennes as him.
There's a difference between campy and undermining the effort you're putting forth. The last movie, he is birthed from near death by the blood of his enemy and by the blood of his most...
You didn't think that transformation scene was campy?
No, it wasn't. It was really actually well done. And you've got a cult of druid-like characters who are at his disposal, who are hanging on his every word. And you're like, okay, they've finally established this guy as a legitimate, monstrous threat who could eliminate the entire school if he wanted to. Great. We get to this movie, and Harry's about to get on the train, and he looks over, and he has a hallucination of, instead of Voldemort in his cloak or wizard robes, it's him in an all-black, jet black suit, black tie, black button-up shirt, black suit jacket, pants, and he's constantly like twitching his head like he's about to be in a music video.
We see this shot over and over in Harry's memory too.
And it's real weird. And then we fast forward to the big fight with Dumbledore, Voldemort, and Harry are going at it. But then you get to this fight, and Harry is possessed, his mind's possessed with Voldemort. So he's having flashbacks to the previous movies. He's having flashbacks to Cedric dying and the fight from the last movie with Voldemort. And then Voldemort starts pouring in visions of potential futures where Voldemort would take control of his body. And one of the images we see is of Voldemort on the head of Harry, but it means that Voldemort is wearing a zip-up hoodie with a t-shirt and blue jeans, which furthermore makes him look less and less threatening. And then
he says, look at me.
He keeps saying, look at me in the mirror. And he's wearing just a casual, like something you'd wear to the park or out for a jog. He just like zip up t-shirt, and he's like, look at me. And then it keeps cutting to these potential futures. And then what else is it cutting to, Hannah? Describe it as a filmmaker can, please.
So it's I'll describe it from like the production side. It's Ralph Fiennes as Voldemort, smiling, dressed up in all the bald cap. He has the weird wand thing, the long nails, all of it. But they put him in front of like either a green screen or a blue screen, one of the two. And they threw up like a stock wallpaper from like you would buy that's like emo spooky wallpaper or something. It's very like
the clouds are moving fast behind him, and it looks like something you would do if you were like filming a karaoke video for yourself.
Yeah, it has like a vignette around it. Someone on TikTok said it looked like one of those like when you watch reality TV and it's like they turn around and they're like, I'm sassy, I'm a problem, or whatever. It looks like it was filmed for like cheap TV in this high production
multi-million-dollar movie,
and it like cuts it out, and it's just
three times.
It's just Voldemort going da ha. And it just cuts to it, and it's so funny. But it's again, hilarious.
It's funny, but when you're talking about building a villain to make him the ultimate threat to your main character, having these three moments in this film completely undermines him as a villain's threat, to where I'm like, I'm no longer scared of this guy. Like, sure, he'll do something later on in the series, but this man just looked like a goofball 3 times.
He did that too in the Goblet of Fire when because that part you're like, he has his Death Eaters around him, they're all cloaked and whatnot, but he do you remember when he's like running around and he's like, pick up your wand, and he's like his cloak's like flowing and he's like running back and forth, and the way he holds his wand with like just his thumb, it's like just his thumb pressed to his palm.
Everyone else has like a firm grip on it, like, because you're channeling power with it. He's just like daintily, like, if this is a cup of tea, and he's got his pinky out and he's just like lightly, daintily, but then he has the weirdest he can't keep an inflection in his voice to save his life. He's like
Yeah, I was just, man, he's so great for that. Like, saying. I have a soft spot in my heart for Aro. I feel like Aro from Twilight is a campy, crazy villain. Love him. He eats up the scenery every time he's on set or on the screen. And Voldemort's like creeping up there next to him. He's not going to surpass Aro in my heart, but like he's there.
So I'm the opposite. I want my villains to be as threatening as possible. So when their demise happens, it's satisfying to me. Again, one of the greatest of all time is Darth Vader. He only has one camp scene as Darth Vader, and it's no. When he hears that Padme,
that one.
This guttural no, which is completely out of character. And
he was still Anakin at that point. He hadn't fully transitioned.
Oh boy, that's a loaded statement there, Hannah. But no, he was Vader, and he only has one. The rest of the time, he's the threatening force to worry about, that he's always going to pop up. He's going to destroy everything. This guy, man, he could be in like a music video from like the early 2000s. That,
like a Linkin Park video.
Yeah, like he could, like when the CGI one, like for in the end, he could just be in there somewhere wandering around, and it would have fit right in.
Oh man, at that scene too, we have this is a how does magic work question for that part of the movie.
How does magic work? Part 5.
What? How does magic work? We don't know. We're just muggles. Let us tell you so. I don't know. I tried to do something clever, but it didn't work out. But yeah, every movie, something gets revealed to us and we're like, what are the rules? What are the rules of magic? So Dumbledore and Voldemort have a duel and they use their wands without spells, right?
But also, whenever the Death Eaters are attacking the students and then the Order of the Phoenix appears, these guys are just like pointing their wands and like
stuff comes out. Things happen.
Like bolts are coming out and people are like getting flown back, but nobody's saying spells until Bellatrix, right? Bellatrix?
She uses the killing curse,
right,
and kills Sirius.
Right. So that's the only time. And then we transition to Voldemort versus Dumbledore. Not only are they not using spells, but they're able to channel and control water, fire, sand, and like control it by just pointing their wands. They're teaching, but the thing is, when you go to the school, what are they doing with the students?
Teaching them spells. So, oh gosh, I almost knocked the table over. Get too excited. Teaching them spells. So that's like leads me to think like, okay, if you're starting out, you need spells in order to like access your magic. But if you get better at it, then maybe you don't. Like maybe you can just like think it or something and it comes. I don't know, but it hasn't been explained to us.
I mean, then you get to the other point. 1 movie ago, when Harry does that thing to the mean lady and makes her inflate, he doesn't have his wand. He doesn't say anything. He literally just looks at her. She inflates.
He didn't do that. Dobby did. Wait, no, I'm getting that confused. You're so right. Oh gosh, I got that confused.
I'm so right.
You're so right. I got that confused with because we. You want to know a secret, guys? You want to know a secret? We're recording all these podcasts in 1 month and releasing them.
These movies are being strung together so fast
that we get them mixed up. So
to be fair,
apologize.
We saw a character we thought was Dobby, and it was like sad, depressed Dobby.
Why hasn't Sirius freed him? Because he's like, oh, you obey your master. Give him some pants and let him go.
Yeah.
And then Sirius is like, oh, this is my house, and I gave it to Dumbledore. I'm like, is that where he's staying? Because it literally is sandwiched magically in between buildings. But then he just leaves his house elf alone there for years. Okay, that's neither here nor there.
How does the magic work? Please, if somebody, when they're listening to this podcast, please send me like a PDF file, a Wikipedia page, a WikiHow page, a Harry Potter wiki page, a fandom page, something, please. How does the magic work in this universe so I can have some rest at night?
They're just going to be like, go on Pottermore. You have to pay for Pottermore. more.
I'm not giving any money to this franchise. We're not stealing the movies. We're totally watching them
on HBO Max. Don't worry.
HBO Max, but I'm not giving any money to this franchise.
Okay, so we didn't mention this. Oh yeah, you did in the summary. So the part when Snape is trying to teach Harry how to keep his mind protected, and they have these sessions, and he's like throwing this curse out.
Control your mind, Potter.
Yeah, it's like not curse, it's a spell. He keeps sucking these memories out, and that's when we see the black suit Voldemort like voguing it. Vogue, that one, like the Madonna song. We see that all the time when he does this. It's like the same 5 things. It's like Cedric dying, a random shot of Harry's eye or something like that, and then the trade scene with Voldemort like twitching his head, and then Harry gets just so fed up with it, and he uses a spell on Severus, and they get in a little bit of a fight beforehand or something, and Severus is like, "You're just like your father, he was weak," or whatever, and he uses it on Severus, and we get a flashback. What are you laughing at?
We get a flashback to when they're in school, both Snape and Harry's father, where they were both students at Hogwarts, and Harry's father was like, put a spell on Snape, is like, I wonder, does anybody want to see me do a spell to take Snape's pants off? And it cuts, and Snape is like, we're done here. I don't want to talk about this anymore.
I mean, legitimately, yes, James Potter was a bully. It was confirmed. We saw that. I've heard a little bit about that, like from the fandom. I think that it gets clarified later on. I mean, yeah, he definitely, that was like not questionable. He was bullying him, but that's not Harry's fault. And his life is on the line. And Severus is like making it heckin' personal. And he's like, we're done here. We're not doing this anymore. I'm like,
but because Snape stopped the training, Voldemort is able to possess Harry's mind in the ministry.
And like, that's unfair. Like, okay, yeah. So Harry was defending his father. He didn't know any better, but also it's not Harry's fault of what his father did. And he's a child, and you're trying to give him the tool to like help save him. And he's just like, no, I can't be bothered with this memory. I can't do this. I'm like, he's so petty. Maybe, okay, I feel like maybe I have overstepped my bounds with some Harry Potter fans, because I know that this is like a huge, like, we're going to find out more and more about Snape, but I just felt like it was irresponsible of him to stop just because of that. What did you think?
Again, like I'm trying to say with especially this movie, it's a bunch of stuff that it doesn't really make sense connected together into one thing. Like it's a clear plot in the sense of like Voldemort's back, and that's pretty much the clear plot part. Everything else is just like, we need something to get from Harry is at home to Harry confronts Voldemort. We need something in between that is not him just like training or anything like that. Oh, let's give him a side antagonist. Let's cause more problems at school, have more school drama. I'm like, just give me the story.
There was like less school drama than the last one in this one, I will say. But so Cho Chang, they were like, if you remember, Cho Chang was like kind of boyfriend girlfriend with Cedric Diggory in the last one, and he died. And then she's like, I maybe like Harry Potter. And then his friends are like, you should kiss her. And then Harry does, and Hermione's like, oh man, maybe you shouldn't have kissed her.
More importantly, they kiss in front of a picture of Cedric Diggory that moves and smiles.
It felt a little icky. But Cho's the one who was given the truth serum, and they find that out later, that she was given a truth serum to make her tell about the room requirement or whatever. And at the end of the movie, she's not seen smiling with like Harry and Hermione and Luna and Ron. And we were like, what about Cho? Because they all hated her after that. They thought that she'd ratted them out. I don't know if she's going to come back up. Maybe she will, but I was like, are they just going to forget? Like, is that over? That whole plot line's over now? Just like, oh, just throw it away. We have to move on. So we have one more big thing to talk about that's big with this movie. And then we're going to go into what we saw that was positive with this film for like kind of gleaning what a Christian can spiritually, because that's a big thing with Harry Potter is like, oh, it's witchcraft. But we did find points in here that reminded us of biblical truths.
What a Christian wants, what a Christian needs, whatever makes you smiling.
But before we get to that part, we'll end on that positive note. This is the movie with Dolores Umbridge in it, and she is hated more than Voldemort. She's hated more than any character really in all of Harry Potter. And so Umbridge hate, is it deserved? I'm going to throw that question to you and let you answer it, and then I will answer it, and then we'll move on.
So I'm answering as a former teacher. So does she go past her bounds? Yes. Does she do awful things? Yes. But in the first 10 minutes that she's at school, she does some things that I'm like, that's actually pretty needed. First things first, she adds rules back. She adds punishment for rules. She adds curriculum. She has them actually go over the rules and regulations of magic. She has them study. She has like classroom decorum. She has like, you can't just shout out answers in class. You can't confront the teacher in class. And there's going to be like a semblance of order and structure to class time. It's not going to be just a bunch of like silliness. It's not going to be a bunch of like, let's do something wild and crazy. Let's create animals from nothing. Let's, it's
create animals from nothing.
Okay. But, bring something from, a box and make it attack people. Multiple times this has happened. This woman acts like, and for the most part, for at least for the first 10 minutes, like a normal teacher should, bringing some kind of structure to a school where, it's needed. Like, these kids need rules, they need structure. And the character that initial moment is meant to make you hate her because she reminds you of the fact that school is not meant to be goofy fun time. A lot of kids when I was growing up were like, man, I wish this place was like Hogwarts. You could do whatever you want. You could play, you could have fun.
Yeah. Also, they stopped learning math and like basic writing and reading comprehension at age 10.
Right. The thing is, when you're a teacher, you have to have structure in your classroom, and students have to conform to certain kind of rules for things to function. It's not a matter of just having fun and games and stuff. You have to have some kind of order or there will be chaos. Now, I do not excuse anything else she does. She is a nightmare. But the concept of bringing some kind of rules and regulations and order and structure, having them actually learn the ways magic works and read about it and learn about how it functions, I think that's important. I think that's something that should have had a teacher doing that already.
I feel like McGonagall does that.
But yeah, but at the same time, she is sassy and she is like, she kind of sometimes just does whatever she wants to do. And I'm like, these kids need some kind of framework inside of this nightmare fuel place that is people talking to them that are ghosts and stuff. There needs to be like some kind of semblance of like, here's the steps to doing this. Here are the rules and here's what you must follow. And at first that's fine. And she's hated partially because of that, because she's taking the fun out of Hogwarts. But then, she does actual stuff that makes her hatred deserved. For the most part, at least that little segment is fine. After that, and when she starts having Harry write, and his hand becomes carved with it, too far. Bad. What do you think?
So I understand where you're coming from with the structure, because we've been saying that since day one. Like, there just needs to be
What are the rules?
More going on here, because these are kids who are they're still children who are developing into adults. They can't just learn how to be wizards. They have to learn other things too, like how to read English. Are they even they're from England, like they were the birthplace of the language. Are they even reading some of the great British poets or the great British authors? Like, probably not. They probably never try to think of, I just had his name in my head. Yeats? No, he was a famous poet. Every time I'm starting thinking of like, I'm like, oh, like Edgar Allan Poe, he was American. Emily Dickinson, she was American. I was like, Jane Austen. They read some Jane Austen.
Some Bronte.
Shakespeare. Have they studied any Shakespeare plays? What about math? Do they just, do they have just know how to use a calculator? Do they understand geometry?
They just decided to stop learning academics at grade like 3. And like, from now on, you are just going to know the least amount of information you need to learn to read a basic like menu.
Like, do they know how to do basic algebra? Like, I don't know if how taxes work in England, but like, could they balance a checkbook? It's like, oh, and we find out that they have their own currency. He's like, they go to get into the Ministry of Magic through like a phone booth or whatever, and Ron's dad's like, oh, my muggle money. I'm like, well, they have their own currency. So it's like, I don't even, yeah. Okay, so I get that. I get the need for structure. I get the need for direction. And I agree with you. I don't excuse anything she did that was literally torturing children. And it did bring me, this is my negative take, flashbacks to when I was schooled in an American public school, Will taught in American public school. And there's just this extreme pressure especially in high school, just to pass kids along that need help. And I mean, I saw it when I was in school and whatnot, but I felt like that, like they reduced their learning literally to like, just pass the test, remember the facts. And she kind of treats education like that. Like, it's just remember it till you need it. And then you don't have, she didn't really care after that. And so that really irked me. And then obviously like her the only desire she had was for things to be a certain way in her control, and no desire for the betterment of the students or anything like that. So I totally get that. Like, and we all experienced that type of principal or that type of teacher, and that's why people dislike Umbridge so much, because it's a personal thing for us. But yeah, like, that was just my complaint about how she was like, I am fixing the system, and she really wasn't, except being pro structure. But even then, she messed that up. Okay, so we're gonna move on to the positives, and I found, like, and you did too, some actual more positives in this one, and the messages that related to the Christian worldview. The first one I wrote down was, so Harry has to fight to keep control of his thoughts because he's being infiltrated by Voldemort, which is very reminiscent of like spiritual attack and spiritual combat. What do we call that? Spiritual
warfare.
Spiritual warfare. Thank you. It's very reminiscent of spiritual warfare. And it also, Christians are called to self-control. They control our thoughts and our actions and rein in our flesh and all those things. And I've related very heavily to that, because I was like, oh, like, obviously, because that leads into the second point, that Voldemort literally tempts Harry to kill Bellatrix. Bellatrix kills Sirius. Harry runs after her, corners her, and Voldemort's like, do it, like, like, do it, like, literally that moment. And Harry has to choose, and he does not to, and instead turns it on Voldemort, which is the real threat. Like, he's the real problem here. And I said that's very similar to how Satan tempts us to sin and to do evil. Like, because Voldemort reasons with Harry and is like, she deserves it. She did a horrible thing. Like, you have every right to do this. And Harry has to be like, no, I'm not going to be like her. I'm not going to do that. I have to find the real threat here. And that just was really something I connected with into me in my spiritual life.
No, I would agree. That's something that any Christian nowadays has to deal with. I mean, when you're constantly inundated with media and news and facts, there's also an inundation of fear, anxiety, worry, other forms of temptation, greed, anger, whatever, that those things would dominate your thoughts. So the Bible talks about submitting yourselves to God, resisting the devil, and he will flee from you. It takes the twofold practice of submitting yourself to God and then resisting the devil. There's also the idea that God did not give us a spirit of fear, but of power, love, and self-control. And so instead of letting fear overtake us, that God gave us the spirit to resist these fearful thoughts, these thoughts of, anxiety, that God has given us the preparation, the tools we need. And so we kind of see that a little bit here where, it's, obviously broken and messed up, but like Snape gives him the tools to strengthen him in his resolve. And Harry knows what the right thing is. He knows the right path. And it's just a matter of applying it to the situation, which is attacking Bellatrix, but also fighting this ultimate evil. And so I would say my point, my spiritual notation from this is there's a scene right before Harry goes back to Hogwarts where Sirius Black meets with him privately, and he's like, you're not neither bad nor good. You have both inside of you. What you do with that is what matters. Now, as Christians, we are, we're changed on the inside. We have the Holy Spirit inside of us. We've been made new, but we still have the flesh. We still have the inward battle of resisting temptation, resisting the wrong, and doing the right. And so, like Paul talks about in Romans, the things I want to do, I don't do. The things I do, I don't want to do. And so it's an inward battle. And so the idea of like, you do battle your thoughts, and thoughts are really hard to fight against. But what determines your path towards sanctification is what you do with the knowledge of right and wrong, the path you're presented with. When I was a kid, I sang a little song. I'm not going to sing it now, but it's just two choices on the shelf: pleasing God or pleasing self. Doing the path of what you fleshly want, or doing what God wants. And you have that choice every day, with every thought, with every action. And that is the trudge, the mud deep walk through sanctification of every day, making a new choice that'll take you steps back or steps forward on your earthly path. And every day you choose. And so you get a little glimpse of that. Yeah, we're not like, it's not the yin and yang thing where it's like, I got good and bad in me and I can do whatever I want. It's more like the good is strong, but whatever you could still feed the flesh. You could still linger in that. And there's a call not to.
Well, we are out of time. We recorded actually pretty long, so I'm just going to wrap it up here. But we are on the downward descent now into the final movies. We have 3 more to go, which is actually Harry Potter 6 and then Harry Potter 7, but in 2 parts. So we are on the home stretch now. We are almost through the Harry Potter universe. At least this section. We're not going to do Fantastic Beasts or anything else. So thank you for listening. And
I'm sorry to all those Potterheads out there who are offended by our takes. We remember that we did not grow up with this. We were not immersed as little children into this fantasy world. And so it's hard for us to be nostalgic or whimsical about this. We both love film. Hannah took many classes on it and is able to make films. She's a film studies student. I took some classes on cinema as well as theater, and we both can look at this analytically, critically, and we don't want to hurt any feelings. We get it. These are very popular. People love them. We're happy you love them. We want you to love them. We're just looking through it through a Christian lens, but also a critical lens and how it stands up to the test of time.
So that'll be it for us this time. We'll see you later, guys. I'm Hannah.
And I'm Will.
Okay, bye.